With us now for more is Jasper Ondap, equity analyst of Regina Capital Development Corporation. Good to see you again. Welcome back to the program, Jasper.
Good morning, Kathy. Thank you so much for having me here.
All right, so what explains this continued resilience in risk appetites? I've been seeing higher opens and closes on the PSCI.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have been seeing since the news when, announced by Governor, DSP Governor Remolona said that we have the room to cut more rates, up to two more cuts this year. And again, this pushes yields or drags yields lower, making our market more attractive to investors, right? And we've been seeing that even if the news and the global noise with the 90-day pause coming to an end, with the new letters being sent out to our neighboring countries, or all this noise and tariffs, and just we just finished the Middle East tension, and we're seeing that the risk appetite is quite favorable for us. There have been investors really buying more into our market. And if we look at the fund flows since last week, the Philippines still has the least foreign investor institution outflows, coming at less than $1 billion, while our neighborhood countries or neighboring countries in ASEAN is more than 2 billion already. So this puts us in a favorable spot against other emerging markets.
Yeah, but in the way of the trade letters, I mean, that's just the first wave. There could be more. So the minute we receive one, what kind of scenarios are the markets conjuring?
Yeah, for sure that this maybe at the first few news or just the first reaction might be the same with what happened in April on the Liberation Day, right? Maybe a slight pullback might happen. But since a lot of our economies, a lot of analysts have been already saying this since the beginning of the year, that the tariff impact on the Philippines is quite minimal or just mild, not as much as those who are impacted with more than 20, 30, and 40% of reciprocal tariff. The Philippines at 17%, and even with a very low exposure to US, makes it still pretty favorable. So if there may be a pullback once a lot are sent out of the Philippines, there might be just a slight pullback that may happen in the market, but eventually, market would pick up. Maybe we're hoping at looking at the next month's report on GDP may be favorable, maybe acting as the new catalyst for the market to come up.
Well, speaking of catalysts, we're a week in, or more than a week in, into the lower transaction taxes because of SIMEPA. What impact has that had so far?
Yeah, it has certainly been a very good impact in the market, right? Before the law, I guess the last 2 weeks ago, the average daily transaction or turnover was around 5.8 billion. And last week, when the tax was cut by 50 points from 0.6 to 0.1%, we've been seeing that the average was around 8 billion. And right now, we're really seeing that at least the value turnover was rising, right? There's more players now because the break even is was quite lower. A lot of short-term players are entering the market. This is quite good for short-term players. And there's a lot of speculators now for several names or across the board. So this really have been a good impact for the market, boosting liquidity in the market.
Which names? Speculators and short term, but what about the long termers?
Yeah, we're seeing now that rates, the rates have been relatively going up since last
Nag-record
month
sila
or the
gamay
last few weeks, adjusting to the rate or the yields at the bond
Nag-record
market
sila gamay sa
with
nag-chat.
the ongoing rate cuts. But for several names outside the index, there's also an upside in several consumer names or gaming names. But the short-term players are just entering in and out. But for long-term players, they're still looking at for the dividend ones. Those of which names who are quite fixed income in nature, giving out more than 6% in yield. So those names are still attractive.
Okay, we'll keep those in mind then. Thank you so much, Jasper Ondap of Regina Capital Development Corp.